Hi. Do you like my surroundings? I'm Nathan Passard. In a world where everyone's favourite group are the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, mine are the Hollies. Is the Hollies. Welcome to this episode 3. I'm making episode 0 of Would You Believe, the world's first and only Hollies podcast that there's ever likely to ever be. Sorry, straightening. In the entire world. It's a glorious sunny day here in Hull Beach. It's very frosty, but I'm filming in a conservatory because there's good lighting in here, and it's 1965. An incredible year for the Hollies. Now, they only made one album, but despite that, they did do a lot of things. I mean, it was a very busy year for them. Briefly, before I continue with 1965, no, just to say quickly, the first single they recorded was actually begun at the end of 1964. That's how busy they are. And I neglected to show this, my signed copy of the demo of Here I Go Again, signed by Curly Alan Clark with the Curly A. That's how it is, Curly signature there. Baby That's All on the B-side. We sort of talked about Baby That's All, but what's this doing here? We never really... I just think there's a great 3-part harmony on that song, but also this... It's a really nice kind of... One of those... Who was doing that back then? Great song. But Tony Hicks does this... similar to Jennifer Eccles 4 years later on, but also it's kind of a melodic song, but he does a sort of R&B Merseybeat guitar solo on it, and I just thought that was an interesting merge of two styles that, like much else in the case of the Hollies, doesn't get enough credit. Most of this album, Hollies, I call it Hollies 65, was actually, not most of it. Where's me list this? Some of it was recorded in 1964 as well, so that year was so busy. They made 2 albums, did nationwide tours and things, loads and loads of appearances, radio appearances and things like that, and begun their next album. How many songs were recorded there? Yeah, several of them. You'll find out as this unfolds. Hollies 65 is a great album. Here is my original copy of this. A sticker's peeled off. I probably got this from HMV or a Virgin Megastore in probably Tottenham Court Road or somewhere. The mono and stereo mix and one thing. This is how I got most of my Hollies albums. And I think I got this third, right? Because I heard the EMI label there. Look at this array. Hollies 65. Well, the first 2 albums begin with a massive up-tempo kind of showstopper thing. So I remember hearing those 2 albums and thinking, oh my god, how is this going to start? How is Hollies 65? The third album is Hollies 65. The first thing notice they've ditched it's not 1964 anymore, it's 1965. So they've ditched the tally-ho country gentleman, Chris Eubank, chain going across here, monocle kind of. And they're finally wearing their own thing. Tony Hicks and Graham Nash. It's New Year's Eve 1964, the bell chimes, it's New Year's Day 1965. What's happened to my hair? My hair isn't an Elvis quiff anymore. They finally had up-to-date 1960s haircuts, and it suited. Well, they suited both, but these... Graham Nash now, if you go and see him on tour now, he's gone back to his... It's kind of now he looks like he did on the first album, just with white hair, that's all. And yeah, there they are. It begins with a folk song. I remember hearing that and thinking, what are they're doing at the very last day, which is that thing, and I thought, oh my god. Now, folk music's not a thing I sort of know enough about. I remember seeing an episode of Happy Days, that well-known show where you can, that's well-known for getting dates accurate and stuff, They were flares in the 70s. But there was one episode where Chachi is doing, and I think Joni's with him, and they do a rock and roll thing. They start going, come go with me. They're at some audition or something. And the guy goes, oh, whoa, stop, what are you doing? He goes, that's rock and roll. And he goes, you bet you're a baby. And he goes, no, rock and roll's dead now. Folk music is the big thing now. So was that some bandwagon thing in the 60s, was it? Because I don't know, you see. The Four Seasons made a folk album, but I think that was the year before this. And the Byrds hadn't quite come. I mean, that was 1965, but that hadn't quite... I don't think that had come out yet, and but the energy still soon kicks in. So you listen to it thinking, oh, what are they? And then that 3-part harmony, that everybody's gonna pray. That's Graham. Alan's going, everybody's gonna pray, and Tony's going, everybody's gonna pray. And it's a great song. And the energy of Bobby Elliott and Eric Haydock on this, the way it drives along, and Tony's guitar solo. Is he the first guy to do harmonics? Did Tony Hicks invent, guitar, knobs showing off? So he started that, didn't he? But it was good because he did it. He might just be doing that. But I'm sure he's going. I can't do it very well. That's an interesting song. That came out as a single in places like Scandinavia, Europe, and things. So there's a strange fact about this song, and again, I talked before about footage being destroyed in the 60s, and if you're someone my age, going back and collecting all that stuff, we have got something like 4 or 5 different versions of the Hollies doing Very Last Days, some of it miming, some of it live, and Graham playing a 6-string banjo, which is tuned to guitar. I have one of those. And yeah, it's just interesting how we've ended up with loads of it. And the current Hollies now, they do that song in their set list. I don't know if they've always done it or if they brought it back. I don't remember them doing it in 2004 when I saw them. I think they recently brought it back. I mean, they play in Norway and things as well, so maybe their Scandinavian fan base requested that song and decided to bring it back. The next song here is You Must Believe Me. Now, well, before we get into the album, let's talk a bit about Yes I Will, a fantastic song. Now, was that recorded in 1964 or was that the early version? It would appear that the early version was the end of 1964 and the one we know was January 1965. I first heard that song, a snippet of it. The B-side of a thing called Holly Days was a thing called Holly Pops, and I just remember it having the... So, it's probably an E, but let's say it's in D. And one of my favourite changes is you got an E minor, and then I love those. ELO do that a lot, and like yes I will. And of course the Monkees did it as well. Now they called it I'll Be True to You, and Davy Jones always claimed that he had no idea the Hollies did a version of it. And I thought, well, you're from Manchester, you're a 60s pop star, how could he not have? But it's quite possible because he lived in America at the time. He'd already moved there, and I don't know if the Hollies... So 65 was when the Hollies finally went to the States. They finally did a show. I don't think they did a tour. I think it was one of those Murray the K type of things, or where they do like a package bill with loads of people, and they only get to do 2 songs each or something like that. They probably... I think Mickey's Monkey was one of the songs they did, and then whatever their... Now, what was their single at the time? Or was it still Here I Go Again or something? Did things came out a bit later in the States, or... I don't know if there were... It wouldn't have been I'm Alive. It's probably too early for I'm Alive, I think. But I love this. So try this with me at home, okay? You got your 3 mates. I'll sip a tea. I'll just wait for you to get 3 mates together. There's 3 of you, is there? So one of you go... I have no idea how they do this. Yes, I will. That's one of yours, note. Will. And then one of you goes... Yes, I will. And then one of you goes, yes, I will. Okay? After 3. 3. 1, 2, 3. And then that end, when Grant goes, oh, yes, I will. And then goes, oh, yes, I will. And then Tony goes, oh, yes, I will. So you do have a thing, which I'm going to touch upon later on a song here when I get to it, where Tony and Anna would probably be singing the same note. I used to have this weird obsession thing where no, harmony has to be 3, but I think the Byrds never did that. I think Roger McGuinn and Gene Clark used to sing the same thing in unison, didn't they? And then David Crosby would sing the high harmony above them. So it doesn't always matter. It still sounds rich and it still sounds brilliant. There's a great session outtake of this song where you can hear Tony Hicks's original accent. He goes, I'm not going to play it solo. And I love that. Like, that's what he used to sound like. It kind of got softened over the years, and he doesn't speak with quite such a strong accent anymore. So it's nice that got preserved on tape forever. That's great. when the next song came in, You Must Believe Me, I remember thinking that this is still the Hollies. This is still brilliant. When I first heard this where have I put it? Yeah, the mono stereo version here. Is that the one that's got the? Yeah. So, but I can't demonstrate this. Bobby Elliott uses the bass drum as a tongue fill. He goes da 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 ba ba, and the ba ba, and he does that. He holds the sticks like that. I love that. I have stolen that so many times. There's footage of me doing it at my gigs. Like he does it on Here I Go Again. He does it on Stay. I think he does it on loads of them. And it's such a great thing. And he's a very tall guy. I've met Bobby Elliott a few times, and he's tall as well. So, and in those days, if you're a drummer, you'll probably notice this. So where the stool is as high as the bass drum. Well, it's higher, isn't it? So you're sitting on a really high stool, and there's just this tall guy doing this. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Who wrote that? Now, it's the one I'm thinking, because see, these are all in a different order, so I'm going to have to be checking both of them. That was Curtis Mayfield. Well, I'll be gosh darned, it was Kurt. Well, it says Mayfield. I'm assuming it's Curtis Mayfield. Oh yes, so the Hollies are doing soul songs. That they've discovered soul music by then, which I thought was later on, when they started doing things like Reach Out, I'll Be There in their set list, when Bernie Calvert joined. But no, as early as this, they were doing soul music. Now, Eric Haydock, I'm going to get into that later on, but he sort of, when he left the Hollies, or was fired, or whatever the story is, he then went on to join it's kind of a soul covers band. And I wonder if he was the one pushing for the Hollies to do soul music. But then they're doing Doris Troy, aren't they? And Doris Troy is Northern Soul. I mean, was she a pop act or was she a soul act? I've lost my page. Because I'm trying to link to the next song, which is Put Yourself in My Place, which they're still being credited as Ransford, Clark Hicks and Nash. Put Yourself in My Place is a great song. It's got this... Now, this is a bit down-tuned, so it would be... And then it's got a... Now that could even be a... Put yourself in my place. The song is just solid. They never had click tracks in those days, but I would guarantee if you were to line that up with a click track, it would probably be completely spot on. It's just dum 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 dum. Eric Haydock does a bass solo in the song. Do 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 do. It's great. There's a piano on this, which I've now forgotten. I looked up who it was. It wasn't Tommy Sanderson, and I don't think Nicky Hopkins was. He would only. I don't think he was kind of, well known this early on, or it could have been one of the first things he did. Great piano on that song. Alan Clark playing harp on it. I keep saying harp. I keep wanting to say harmonica, but it is a harp, not a harmonica. And the song, it's a brilliant song. It's a high lose face. Yeah, it's just great. Like, where are they coming? Who says lose face in a song? They are brilliant. I'd love to know, because look, there are interviews where they talk about later things like Carrie Ann and stuff like that, where they have been interviewed and asked, but these early songs, were the three of them sitting in a row and like writing this stuff, and one of them going, let's say lose face, and one of them going, did one of them have a riff? Was and also the whole thing with Tony getting credited. Well, it was Ransford then, but there was a thing about when Lennon McCartney started. One of them said, "Oh, should we call it Lennon McCartney Harrison? Should we get George in?" And the other one went, "Nah." You know what I mean? I thought, but Clark, Hicks, and Nash kept it the three of them. And I'd love to know who wrote what, because all of them have proven themselves to be magnificent solo songwriters, as we'll find out later on. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's see, do I do this? This is why I don't plan this to see. Do I do it in order of the tracks as they appear on the album, or the tracks in the order in which they were recorded? Down the Line is the next song on the album. That's the Roy Orbison thing. Now that's got a great... Every gotta be my loving baby, you ain't got to stop. I'm gonna get some real gonna love, it'll drive a cool cat wild. I'm gonna move on down the line. I gotta do it right, do bad all the time. I love that, the energy of that. Again, they're going back to their... it doesn't start off with a massive, and you're worrying, oh my God, are the Hollies going to go all folk on me? But no, they don't. They fortunately, the pace on that is incredible. I'm trying to think if there's something... There's a great solo on that. Tony... I think he's still playing that 335. I'm still have yet to find out if he had 3 of them and had them painted, put the Bigsby on, removed it, or just had the same one, or had different ones. But I'm sure that's a 335 he's playing on this. Because obviously, when you see black and white photos, I think it's a black one. I've seen pictures of him playing a red one. Really nice inlays on it. I like the ones with the, what are they called? Parallelograms. Like they're a bit like chevrons. I like those ones. They don't go to the end of the neck for some reason. They don't have the first fret. Don't have them. Some of them do. Some don't. I still don't know. Now Eric switched to a Fender now, which I was going to show you this later on, but I will. But yeah, I think he's playing a Fender bass already. They're wearing their own gear as well. Yes, I Will is a brilliant. So the B side of that was Nobody, a nice sort of R&B thing. Again, these. When you've got a band as underrated as the Hollies, what happens is you get these. It's hard enough to get people to talk about their singles, even though they do, but not all of them. And Yes, I Will. I don't think it's one that gets mentioned as much as, let's say, Look Through Any Window, for example, and then their album. So when you've got B-sides of songs that are exclusive, that they never did anywhere else, they're just completely. You go to like R&B play, these 62 where they DJ with 45 RPMs and they try and dig out the rarest kind of. I can guarantee no one would play this song, Nobody, and if they heard it, they'd go, "Whoa, what is this?" They would love that. Nobody's a great song. Eric again, the ding 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 ding. That's a great thing of that. Absolutely brilliant. Now that's interesting. He Did, which is the B-side of I'm Alive, was recorded before this album, and that was recorded in 1964 in December. That's a great thing as well. I like the riff in that. I don't know if they were into. Was the Kinks around that? They would have known. No, because they did that tour with the Kinks. That. And Bobby, unusually, it's quite a heavy kind of chuggy song, but unusually he's playing a really light. It sounds like he's using brushes or something. I don't know if he's hitting the snare drum or the rim shot or whatever it is. The Guess Who, a Canadian band I love. Now this is another thing with me. They liked English music. They liked Cliff Richard and Beatles and Hollies, Jerry and the Pacemakers too. I think Searchers as well. Before the USA had heard about these guys, and as early as 1963, I don't know what that must have been. People in Canada, what must that have been like going to see this band play cover songs, and they're doing all these weird English songs. Like, what did people think? Did they know what these songs were? Did they? I mean, there are live recordings of them in those days, and they do sound like they're kind of clapping like that. They did a cover of Shakin' All Over, which, well, that's Johnny Kidd, so that's a UK song, and I think that was a hit. I think that's quite well known. Guess Who are a weird thing as well, where if people in England have heard about them at all, it's usually Canadians, and they go, "Oh, you like Guess Who?" And I go, "Yeah," and they go, "Ah," and then they just list all these songs I've never heard of. Like, I don't know that. Well, which ones do you like? And then I name loads of songs, and then they've never heard of the ones I name. It turns out they didn't really get massively famous until after Randy. Randy did American Woman. I think he wrote that or co-wrote it, and it became a massive hit. Then he left the band, and then the Guess Who, as other people know them, this internationally famous stadium, rock band with Burton Cummings and things, and I think there's stuff, No Sugar in My Coffee or whatever it's called, things like that. And I know Wednesday in Your Garden or Blue is the Night or whatever it is. Or there's one called Ad as well. It's a great song, and their earlier stuff. And one of the things they covered was this song, He Did, which my friend I mentioned, Laura Beebe. Hello, Laura. How's it going? She sent me a version of this, and it made me want to collect everything the early Guess Who ever did when they still had Chad Allen. Chad Allen, may he rest. They were brilliant. I should really get onto it. So those are the singles that came out. When did the EP come out? That's July. I'll save that for the I'm Alive single. Okay, That's My Desire. Is that the one where I'm just checking the set list. This might have been like a 1930s song that I think Ron Richards told them to do a cover of. And they did a great version. This is one of the ones that Hollies fans tend to sort of knock. And I love this. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. To sip a little glass of wine. They have a lot of that da-da-dum. bit that goes to... Now, the end bit of that song, there's a 3-part harmony where it goes... That's my desire. So Graham goes... Za. Alan goes... Now, what does Alan do? Za. Tony goes... What is that? Yeah, so Tony goes, my desire. He does an octave lower than Graham, and I wish that he just went, my desire. Because if he did, it would be a perfect chord. That's my only thing I'll say about that. Everyone else slags that song off. I love that song, but that's the only thing I will say about it. To that, but I'm not who am I? Some schmuck in the conservatory telling the Hollies, my absolute favourite group of all time, how you should do this to your songs. Who am I? I'm nobody to do that. I just said that if I'd have recorded it, I'd have done that. But who am I to say that? Have I got Fortune Teller coming yet? I'm not yet. I want to get to that so bad. I want to get to it, but I can't. Too many people. These guys, man. I've got to sip this. I'm sorry. Alan Clark, Graham Nash, and Tony Higgs. Why don't they get credit, man? Who writes songs like this? It's too, and they say "nowed." They go, "You can do nowed about it." They're singing in American accents, but they go "nowed," and it's like a song about the plague. They're writing a song about the plague or whatever it is, wiping people out, and too many people on this. So I should really have looked. When did Eve of Destruction come out? Was that kind of a fad at the time, and people were writing songs about it? When did they record it? Too many people. It's gonna. July, 30th of July they recorded that song. That's quite a gap, They started this album in November. That's just how busy it was. So had the Enemy Polonus had happened by then? I always used to wonder why the Hollies were in at the 1964 Polonus concert, but not the 1965 one. And I just assumed that they were busy because they were just working so hard, touring up and down the country, going to Scandinavia and things like that they couldn't make it. But no. Do you know why they didn't play the 1965 one? Do you know why? It's because the Hollies didn't win any NME awards in 1965. Can you believe that? 1965. So this thing about them being underrated, I thought was a much later thing, but no, it started even then. Even then people were sort of, even when they were like number 1 and number 2 in the charts, they're so underrated because they're only number 2. You know what I mean? But so that's why they weren't on there. And the fact that they only made one album, and I wonder if it's because the last album, let's call a bell a bell. The last album tanked. It tanked. There's no way around it. The album before this one tanked. Right? It tanked. So maybe there wasn't really incentive, or maybe EMI didn't really say, record another one. They weren't really in a hurry to record another one. And that could also be why some of this was recorded in November and some was in July. I've skipped over an unreleased track. They did the Larry Williams song, She Said Yeah, which I first heard on the Paul McCartney album called Run Devil Run. And I think the Rolling Stones did a version. Yeah, it's on like their second or third album. But that whole... That's a great song. I like the version of it. Is there only one guitar on that? Is Graham Nash plugging in yet? There's a photo of him with a Dan Electro. I'll get to Tony's 12 string. I was going to mention him and Graham both having a Vox. Mickey's Monkey was recorded in January. Now that's interesting. So some of these were done in January, were they? All right. That's good to know. The very last day was done in January, so it wasn't that quite a gap. I think some was done in April. Hang on, no they weren't. April was when they went to the States. Should I talk about that a bit? They went to Bell Studios, didn't they? And they made a demo. How many songs did they do at that? Well, there's 3 that came out. There might be a 4th one that either has been lost or hasn't come out yet. But they did So Lonely, Listen Here to Me, and Bring Back Your Love to Me, which is that 1 minute 40. What on earth? That was re-recorded with different lyrics in 1967, and I think like Mitch Mitchell or someone was playing drums in that because Bobby was unwell. So it's interesting to have a version to hear what it would have sounded like had Bobby played the drums in it. Because I used to think it was just going crazy. Bobby can go crazy, so I just always assumed it was him. I'm talking about the 1967 version. I'm probably getting a bit ahead of myself there. The 65 one is kind of... it sounds like a different snare he's using. I don't know if they went to the States and he had to borrow someone's drum kit or something, but these all sound different. So Lonely is such a... I can't even... is it that? Is it... Is that how it goes? Is it? I've never played this before. That chord is... he's using the tremolo on his amp. Those amps, those Vox amps, they didn't have reverb, but they had tremolo for some reason. So if you hear the shadows, they've got a separate reverb unit that they plug in. I'm assuming they're using Voxes. Yeah, they are, aren't they? But yeah, the Hollies aren't. We're talking about them. That's such a weird song, like a good kind of weird. It's just so unusual, and no one is doing stuff like that. And it changes meaning, because he's going, every time I see you walk with my girl, I get so lonely without you. And that, what? Wait, without what? Who are you getting lonely without? You know, so that was always amusing. Not amusing. It's just amusing. It's not amusing. It's amusing. It's amusing. It's not amusing. It's amusing. I get so lonely without you. So I think this... It's not. I was going to say this is the debut appearance of Tony Hicks's Vox Phantom 12-string. It is not. He had that at least for the November 1964 session when they recorded Yes I Will. And he goes, I'm not going to do it solo, and he's not. But he is playing it at least on the rhythm track. I'm sure there's a bit that goes... And I'm sure that's a 12-string. That is a really unusual guitar, which you think of being later on. I've just remembered seeing a press clipping, I think I mentioned it in episode 0 of Don Rathbone, which I missed out on. Someone in the world has that, and I hope it comes back up again. God, I'd love to have that. But on the back of it is an advert for a Vox Phantom. Now, if you're a diehard Hollies fan, you know, I think the last episode of this got 3 views. you would think of a Vox Phantom and you would think of Don Rathbone as worlds apart, like the Hollies doing that years and years later. But they existed. Vox Phantoms existed, and I have one. I saw the clip of Tony playing it on German television, and I said to myself, I want one of those. And I had one made. May he rest. He might still be alive. I said a guy called Roberto Brandoni. But I don't know if he's not, may he rest. If he is, then sorry for saying may he rest if he's still alive. But he bought the Vox factory when it closed down. So he had this warehouse in Wembley, and you could go there. Imagine this, it's like in Toys R Us or something like that. And you go, oh, I like that. It had millions, all the parts of Vox and Echo guitars and things. And did they have Baldwin? I can't remember. Baldwin might have been a different company, actually. But and I'd say, well, I want that body, I want that neck, I want those tuners, I want that scratch plate, and I want it to be in this colour. I had mine done in indigo blue, though, not like... And I had a black scratch plate on mine, so it's still my own version. Tony's also had a Bigsby on it, which a 12-string with a Bigsby on it is... If you're not a guitar player, you won't know what this means, but if you are, you would be going, right now, you would have your cup of tea, and you'd spit it out and go, a 12-string with a Bigsby on it? Absolutely insane. But yeah, he did have one. I don't think he ever used it. He used to just have it, the handle curled up like that. He probably never used it. I mean, he could have had it replaced, I guess. But anyway, or removed even. So I chose to have a flat one. But yeah, the Q switch I had on mine, the 3 pickups, I think, the Vox logo on the scratch plate, and it had a velvet thing on the back. It still has. It's at home. Obviously, I don't have it with me. But I hope eventually you'll get to see that in one of these videos. And he's playing that 12-string. Now, Graham Nash, recently this is, and I've been a fan for decades, there's a picture of him and Tony, both with Vox Phantoms. So did they both get them? Were they given them? Was it a promotional thing? Did they buy one? Did they think, oh, Graham, you've got one, so I'm going to get one? Or, oh, I like yours, Tony, I want one myself. I've seen one colour photo, it might have been red. I thought it was black, because it's black and white film or videotape that you see of them. But, you know, it would have looked grey. So I thought, well, it's a black one. But no, it's actually red. Unless he had it repainted. That's my alarm. Ignore that. Don't hold. So that was Tony's 12-string guitar. So those are the Bell demos. They're good songs. They're answered. They're not... You could say they're not their strongest, but you could also say, well, who cares? Fair play to them. They're like, look, we've got some studio time. we're in America, we're in the Bell Studios, let's record our own songs. So at least we have a snapshot of that. They would have been the ones that they had just written. They probably wrote them in America. And they thought, let's get these down. I don't know why or how they were there or what the idea was. It could have been something to do with publishing. It could have been that they were going to write songs and, because Lennon and McCartney were doing that. So some American company probably thought, oh, well, these guys are from Manchester, England. They're going to write some songs, like, let's get them to give them to our artists or something. It could have been that, because there were some cover versions of Hollies songs. My friend Kyla did a, not reissue, what's the word? Compilation of about 33 songs in it, and I'd never heard of any of it, or a couple of them I had, but most of them I hadn't. And it's artists at the time, some household names, some obscure bands doing covers of Hollies songs, like actually in the 60s. So yeah, they were underrated, but also people were, taking a chance on them. I've got to look through any window here now. It's probably still a bit early for that. Well, I'll finish side one. That's my side down there. Let's talk about Look Through Any Window. This is, I'm not even gonna, that's a B. I should really have my 12 string for this. You can't see I've put this here, so you can't see it. Just to prove I'm genuinely making mistakes and not miming to mistakes. It's so difficult there. When it switches to C, I love Look Through the Window. There's footage. Yeah, there's footage of them on the Palladium doing this song. The stage comes round as the Hollies playing it. Members of the Hollies, Graham Nash, but I'm sure other members do as well. They remember this wrong, They remember making their debut on that show called Sunday Night at the London Palladium much later on in 1966, and Eric Haydock not turning up and them having to get Klaus Voormann in. But that's not true, because this is like a year earlier, 1965, and they're doing the song. Now, footage exists of it, and I've seen it, and it's great, but where's the other song? I'm sure people did 2 songs on that show. I'm sure they did. The Searchers did. They did that one that goes, they did When I Get Home, and I've temporarily forgotten what the other song was. But they circulate. Where's the Hollies' other song? Did they really only do one song? It could have been that they had to do that, and then because they were the Hollies, they had to speed off and do a gig or do a recording session or a radio show. Speaking of radio show, I don't have my copy of Radio Fun with me. I'll quickly mention that they do, because it's 1965, it's appropriate for this episode, an unreleased song called Ride Your Pony. Lee Dorsey, who did Working in a Coal Mine, and they do this, they do Ride Your Pony then. Great song. A really unusual counting, it's like 2, it's like 1, 2, digga digga dum dum dum, ride your pony. It's higher than that. It might be in C. Ride your pony. But either way, it's a great performance, and I remember when Radio Fun came out, reading the chat list, they go, what's that? Ride Your Pony, 1965. So that's another song we have. The point I'm trying to make about Hollies 65 is that, yeah, they may have only had one album, but there are so many sort of rare, unreleased stuff. There's quite a bit of footage, there's not loads. It was the year that they finally... A possible reason why they're underrated is we're into 65 now, so the original, like the Swingin' Blue Jeans, what Freddie and the Dreamers, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers, the original lot are starting to sort of wane a little bit. And this new mind-blowing music, sort of Rolling Stones, that they had already come out, The Who and things like that, the Kinks and stuff, they were I think Small Faces were as early as 65, the Byrds as well, I mentioned, that was all starting to come in. All of them had some kind of image that you can look at and say, well, you're the this one, you're the that one, they're the this band and they're the that band. The Hollies never had that. They were just a great, great band. You just knew you were going to get high quality music with them, and that was what they were about. They weren't really about image, but that could have gone against them. Maybe that's why they're so underrated, I don't know. What was the B-side of Look Through Any Window? It was So Lonely, wasn't it? So that does tie in, because So Lonely gets put on this album. That has something in common with the next album, where a B-side... Oh God, I can't remember what it's called. I've Got a Way of My Own, isn't it? I've got a way of my own. That song. That's on that album, which is the B-side of... okay, we'll get to that. Well, If I Needed Someone, which we'll get to. I've done this all in a really mad order, haven't I? Doesn't matter. Little Bitty Pretty one. Now, was that 64 or 65? They do an unreleased version of that, which came out on... Was it an Australian compilation that came out in like 1978 or something? Typically, I can't see it. But here it is. June 1965, and it came out. It says Hollies LP 1985. That's the MFP one where they've got really bad teeth on it. I've got that. I want to get Graham to sign that if I see him. He's got a tour coming up. He's coming back here in. I can hear the birds outside. Not Roger McGuinn. I can't. That would be. Hey, do 8 Miles High. That's my favourite. Obviously not them, but like actual birds, tweeting birds. Yeah. That is a brilliant song, and that photo shoot of them on the beach that was used on American Steve, was that 1965? Can you see that? We'll get on to side 2 of this, because they do Lordy Miss Claudia. That's one of those standard rock and roll standards. So they're still very much doing the... there's this argument with the Help album by the Beatles, which came out in the same year, and people are saying, oh, they're doing Dizzy Miss Lizzie, it's a bit out of date doing rock and roll stuff. I think it was still a huge thing. I mean, the first album by The Who, okay, they weren't rock and roll songs, but most of those were cover songs, like James Brown and things like that, R&B songs and things. Now, they did a great version of Lordy Miss Claudia, which there's a great clip of them with Tom Jones singing that much later on when Terry Sylvester was joined. And Alan Clark, 1969 Alan Clark and Tom Jones doing a duet of this song, Lordy Miss Claudia. It's a great thing to have. But anyway, back to the original recording of this. Graham and Tony are going did. They're doing that, which I think comes from. Is it Emil Ford? It comes from that, doesn't it? Why do you want to make those eyes? I think it comes from that. It's a brilliant version. It's so fun. I'm not even going to try and play it. There's another version of Lordy Miss Claudia. You don't need me to play it. When I Come Home to You is the next song, though. That's got one of those. I love doing it. Let's say you're in D. And then go into an A minor. It'll work if you're in E, you go to a B minor. G, can you guess? Yeah, D minor. Correct. So this is an A. A to E minor. Great song. It's a great change, that. There's a great 3-part here where they actually do a chord. They don't do a Tony octave thing. They go to come on home and take you in, and they go or something. Why that? It's great. It's a brilliant thing, and the band will stop, and it's just the 3 singers. Absolutely brilliant track. If you get a chance, check that out. You already know it because you're a Hollies fan watching this thing with all the other. Oh, it's gone up to 6 people now, has it? Well, hi 6 people. We're a very small club of connoisseurs. Fortune teller, I love that. Gadzooks, man. This thing doesn't get sampled. Bobby Elliott is doing. This is a bad thing. He invented drum and bass. It's going ding 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 ding. Oh, it's great. And I'm doing these things on my acoustic guitar, man. If I should really do an episode with me on the drum kit, I can show you some of the things I just blatantly copied from Bobby Elliott. The thing, obviously I can't do him as well as he can, but the things he does. The intro to that, of course, you can compare it to the Don Rathman version, which now exists, alright? And yeah, Bobby just started from. You can just imagine him with like a beret with he's wearing this check shirt at the time. You can't see it in that photo. You can see it. I'll show that later on. I'll show it now. I'll keep alluding to it. I may as well show it now. I have this Swedish compilation which came out during the Eric Halo. This is right at the time, 1965, up to date, and it's a compilation of all. I like Hollies compilations of a theme. Like, there's a good St. Michael one, Marks and Spencer's record label, of just the Hollies with Terry Sylvester. There's a great German one of just Nash and Calvert. I don't mean just those two, I mean just recordings where Nash and Calvert were in the band, and it came out in 68 as well. And there's this one from 1965. So there's Tony's guitar that I mentioned. Graham, right up to date with the fashions. Alan's still doing a little bit of the. He's got the suit on, but he's not quite got the monocle and the pocket watch and all that. Tony's got a bit of a quiff, but he's combed his hair down a bit. Bobby, you can see the shirt I'm doing. Eric is playing his Fender. You can even see what kind of guitar leads the Hollies used. I wonder, things like that. Where do they rehearse? What guitar leads do they use? What plectrums do they use? Stuff I just don't know, you see. Graham is playing a Danelectro. And look, I got 3 of them to sign this. Graham, Tony and Bobby. They very graciously signed that. in the blue pen that I prefer things being signed in. So great. And there's the back of that. It's a Swedish album. Swedish LPs, I think German LPs did too. They had really thin sleeves back then. But I absolutely love this. And God, this is now going to be 60 years old, isn't it? It is the anniversary of 1965. Well, every year is the anniversary of 1965, but this is the 60th anniversary. It's unfortunately the only one for. I like the same font as the Beatles on Please Please Me. The Beatles, that kind of 60s font. I really have a problem with it. This is a massive trend now. Obviously, it wasn't AI in those days, but AI colour, where they've got like sort of purple guitars and they've got like grey faces and stuff. There's a channel called Carter's Remasters, which is a brilliant channel. He does colour in like old black and white Beatles footage, but using proper colours. Like he painstakingly does it. This, obviously, it's come out in '65. This has just been some weird filter has been put in it to make it look like colour, but it's not in colour. You can see Eric's bass is grey, Alan's jacket, and Tony's guitar is black when it wouldn't have been. It would. Hang on, it's quite. No, I don't think it would have been. Graham's. All three of them have got black guitars, which I know they weren't. Yes, it's a shame that. Like, although having said that, they have got the red, the check, the gingham on Bobby Elliott's shirt. Well, maybe it is. Hang on, Tony's got blue eyes as well. Well, there we are. There we are. Anyway, it's great that I wanted to show you that. That's one of my sign things. A thing. Let's go back to this. Okay, a thing I forgot to show you way back in 1964. This I just forgot I had it. I was scrambling in my flat because I had to get a train to get to my mum's here, and I was looking for some stuff I wanted to show to the camera, and then when you're tidying your house and you end up finding other stuff. There was a really nice fan who was around at the time. She met the Hollies. A lady called Catherine with a C. Catherine with a C. Hi, Catherine with a C. She's so friendly. I'm so glad I found these. And she said, look, it's at the point now. I'm going to sell my, collection. I want it to go and live on. And that's the sort of thing I always hope happens. That there's someone who was around at the time, and then for whatever. But I don't want. It's a shame. Obviously, I hope it's not something bad that's happened. I hope it's just them. They just feel like it moving on. And she met them in June 1964, and she saw them like in a hotel. And I'm like, oh God, it's them, it's the Hollies, And she went up to them and it's got like a photo of each of them, and then their autographs, their individual autographs. It's grand. Although that's an earlier picture. Well, no, June '64, so that would have been up to date. Graham Nash. He's still writing Graham Nash Hollies then. No, he's put Nash. I did mention that then they started signing its surnames. This is a great picture. Oh, well, there's Alan in colour, and on the back, there's Eric and Graham in black and white. Alan doing his he rushed his signature, but you can still see the way he does that, the E at the end of Clark, that looks like a Y. That's a very Alan thing. The curly A's there already. But he's already starting to just do the curls rather than actually spell out the letters. Alan Clark. Tony Hicks there, and I think she stuck them to the back of these, and they just fell off over time. Tony's written a message there. Look at Tony's writing. Lots of love, sincerely. I think it's put Tony Hicks, Hollies. That's brilliant. That's so great to see Tony's handwriting. Eric in colour. Eric J. Thanks, Eric J. Now that's what his signature. I used to think his signature looked like that in '65. Maybe he was. His changes a lot. Eric's. His does. I mean, now if you look at it, well, not now, but the 2000s, Bobby, it looks completely different. And now Bobby is already signing it with a. See, I thought this was a '65 thing. He's drawn a picture of an actual Holly, and he had messy handwriting, and he still does now. But he's so what? If having messy handwriting means you're a brilliant drummer, then you can be as messy as you like. Look at that, and I recognise that as Bobby Elliott. Any day I recognise him in it, and she got. This is the tag of Tony's suitcase. I don't know if he gave it to her or she went, hey, look at that, and then ripped the thing off. The Hollies, BEA. That's from Tony's luggage. This is absolutely treasure. I'm so glad I got that, and thanks so much for that. We wrote to each other, and I told her that it does live on. It all goes to the right home, the good home, and it lives on. It lives on. It lives on. A couple of other things here. Really nice, big, massive signatures from 1965. Graham Nash and Alan Clark. Graham's is massive there. Alan Clark. I'm sure that's from '65. I think it is because it's kind of slim, although it was in '63 as well. Alan had songwriting. I love seeing Alan and Graham on the same thing. That is treasure. That Graham Nash and Alan Clark. Graham's still writing Hollies, so it might be from '64. This. Alan Clark's, yeah. Again, it's kind of thin, and you can still make out the word Clark, and he hasn't done the like that. So that could be earlier. Now this Alan Clark, he has. Like, you see what I'm saying about that? An E that looks like a Y. It kind of becomes the underscore, really. So that's how you still make that Clark. I love that. The thin N, Hollies with the... Do they both do that? They do a circle on top of the I. They're doing the T. I think I mentioned that they learned that in school. Like T that looks like a J. Absolutely brilliant. Right. Here's a group one. Now I put this inside my copy of Would You Believe. I thought this is from 1966, although it's got Eric Haydock on it. It's a massive A4 paper. All 5 of them are signed. Look at that. I love that. Bobby is doing the Holly. Now has Bobby drawn? Who's drawn the Holly? It's usually Bobby who does that, but weirdly it's not near his signature. Alan Clark's looks like he did in '63. Tony is, like I say, the T looks like it, but it did for decades. It looks like Joni rather than Tony. Graham Nash. He's writing Nash now. It's smaller. He normally signs it massive. I've got another Eric that looks like that, and sort of a backwards 3 and a massive J. So that oh god, I don't want to bend that. This is great. So Elliot is doing his surname. Bobby has now become Bobby Elliot. I love the way he signs that with a stripe through it. Absolutely brilliant. I think this might be from 1965. That absolute treasure. Oh, I'm going mad. I may as well. I'll get this part over with now. I think this is it's not the last one yet. A copy of I'm Alive. In a later sleeve for some reason, but it's got the factory sample not for sale sticker on it, and in gold pen, Mr. Anthony Christopher Hicks has signed that with a straight toning. I think that's from the 2000s. To me, it looks like he signed that in the 2000s. He now does the T a lot straighter nowadays. Plus, it's a gold Sharpie, which I don't think they had gold Sharpie. In 1983, they were signing stuff in a gold pen. So they had gold pens, but not gold Sharpies. What's the next song? So Lonely. Well, we've covered that. So Lonely is a different version from the Bell version, but it's pretty much the same lyrics and same arrangement. Now, so that was a B-side as well, was it? And they put it on this album. Alright, that's interesting. I've Been Wrong Before. I love I've Been Wrong Before. Like, it's got on... Right, no doubt in my mind whatsoever. You know, before I was questioning, had they met the Kinks? Were they trying to... They must have done, because it literally goes... I mean, if that's not the Kinks, then, this isn't a tree. You know what I mean? Like... Great song. I've Been Wrong Before. And then they got the... Stand by me, love, and I'll give you everything. Oh, he sings really high in that Graham's part. That's a nice song where you've got like Alan singing the song and then Graham singing the middle bit. That was a song. We haven't really talked about that. Like, just one look. I mean, the Beatles would do that. They do a Hard Day's Night where John would sing it, Paul would sing the middle bit. Did the Hollies do something before the Beatles? My goodness me. I mean, obviously John and Paul said when they were doing, show tunes and cover songs and rock and roll stuff in Hamburg, they would. But no, this is where one of them would sing the verse and then the other one would sing the middle bit. I thought, well, just one look, it came out before Hard Day's Night. That tea was brilliant. The album ends on Mickey's Monkey, a great Motown song. They're doing... Is that Smokey Robinson? Oh, it says Holland Osier Holland. I'm sure this was The Miracles. Mickey was Mickey Stevenson. Is there a Mickey Stevenson? Is he a Motown writer or something? Brilliant song. Bobby's bloody thing. It does the mad. And so they close the album with this, and it's like sort of the second album when they close with Set Me Free. They end. So whatever I thought when I first heard this album and I heard the first song. Let me talk a bit about that. When I first got this album, it was like, so I'm sitting down, I'm putting it on, and then the first song comes on, I'm like, they're not doing the big Hollies bombastic, and then as soon as the second song came in, down, I thought, oh, this is it, this is the Hollies, they're back, they're here. I love the third album went on, love it. Got to the end, whoa, what is this? That last song, and it ends with them going, yeah, Bobby going, and then, yeah, and then, yeah, and then, whoa, man, that was brilliant. That was just, I can still remember when I first heard this album, just like I did with the, well, all of their albums really, but this, oh my gosh, I love how they end that. 12 tracks, like I say, a couple of ones have been on B-sides and things. No, they haven't, maybe one of them. This cover, man, is that not the height of fashion? That is just so striking. It's taken by JD. I don't know who JD is, I'm afraid. I probably do, but I don't know him under that name. And that weird effect they've put on it, that kind of washed out, they call it washed out effect. It's absolutely brilliant, and I love the bright red on it. Now, you will have seen some blue biro on this. I met Tony Hicks and Bobby Elliott when they were going into... Oh no, my battery's running out. Can I do something with this? 20%, okay, I think I can keep going. And I forgot to ring the charger. Anyway, yeah, Tony and Bobby signed this outside Guildford, G Live in Guildford. That's my copy of that. I have one from a friend. Alan Clark and Tony Hicks. He met them in the 70s. And this, a mad story. It's too long a story to tell now because this is getting on a bit long a bit. Now, they put a stick on it saying maybe, possibly, maybe signed by Graham Nash. We're not sure. I admit, the N looks just like his. The G, not so much, but I have stood there and witnessed Graham Nash sign things in a hurry. I think it is, and they didn't want much for it, so I gambled on it a bit. I think it is Graham Nash. The A and the M are just like his sort of modern-day signature. But where did he find an orange pen from? Well, I like that it matches the artwork of this, though. So I've not found one... Look at all. Can I line all three of them up? I'd love to find a copy that Eric signed. If there's like an Australian copy from that tour, that would be amazing. That's the holy grail of mine. One that all five of them signed, or one that, yeah, even just signed by Eric on his own. Quick look at the French Magic version. Well, I say quick. Where is it? It was right here. What is happening? Those things were, a lot of people don't, like I say, they don't like the Magic. I love the Magic versions, and they're probably mastered a bit loud, but I like it. Now, what have I missed out on? So the two versions of Yes I Will, Listen Here to Me, Bring Back Your Love to Me, so the Bell demos, She Said Yeah, Little Bitty Pretty One. The single I'm Alive, I've talked about how I first heard that when that came out. Have I... Right, you know what we're going to have to cover, don't you? I mean, it's inevitable, but just make sure I've absolutely covered everything. Oh yeah, You and My Arms. So these are the unreleased songs, because I was thinking, where are those? Like, You and My Arms, I Can't Get Nowhere With You, which I thought was 1966, but that is, I love that. I've done a version of that on my Hollies Sing Hollies album, which will come out eventually. Running Through the Night, see, that's a brilliant song. It's got that country and western thing, that Tony's guitar, Graham's Ever Since the Day I Left. So I'm rushing through these now. We're into 65. It's yeah, Don't Even Think About Changing, which was recorded with Eric Haydock in the group, and then that came out on For Certain Because. I'll probably talk about that on that album. Yeah, so that I'm sure there's another one. The people say that I'm... What song's that? What song is that? The one that goes... People say that I'm the lonely one. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I'm going to prove you're not the only one. Oh, I won't even try that song. That is You in My Arms, isn't it? So what's She Gives Me Everything I Want? What's that? Where's that? That's what I'm looking for. She gives me everything I want. Is that here? Did they record that later on? Oh no, here it is. September 1965. Stewball was recorded in 65, was it? Amazing. That was on the next album. Too Many People. So yeah, Too Many People's got a weird sound effect at the end of it. I think on the mono version. There's also one where you can hear the band in the other studio coming out the echo chamber. I can't remember what that is at the moment. It might... No, I can't remember. Oh, it doesn't matter. But yeah, Very Last Day, what is that? Is it the world blowing up? You know, the songs about destruction and stuff? Or was it just an accident in the studio? Send it in your answers on a postcard or write in the comments below. Some of you have been great. There's a few of you I've been speaking to, and I hope that you three are watching this now. Thanks for those comments before. I look forward to your comments again in this one. This isn't even an hour yet. I was really worried. I was really... okay, that's it, because there is something I've got to save, and I'm just making sure I've done every track from 1965. I'm just going to have to read them all out. Starting from... Oh, you know what's coming. You know what's coming. I'm putting it off. I shouldn't do it because the battery's going to run out. But you do know what's coming. Put yourself in my place. She said, yeah, yes I will. Alternate version. When I come home to you, nobody... Yeah, I did do it. When I come home to you, you know he did. Yes I will. Mickey's Monkey. That's my desire. Very last day. Honey and Wine. That's it. So I can't find my copy of the EP, I'm Alive, which I had at home, and I had it in my flat. And went, no good, I'll bring that tomorrow. And I've come here and now I can't see it. I hope it didn't fall out on the train or something. There's an unreleased song on there. It's called Honey and Wine. It's like is it Lieber and Stoller or Goffin and King? Why am I looking at this? I don't know. It's whoever it is. It's got a great... This came out on Hollies, Not the Hits Again. I think Colin Miles did the sleeve notes, or whoever. No, he compiled it. But whoever wrote the sleeve notes said, yeah, and the Hammond organ on this is good. That's not a Hammond organ. It's Tony Higgs playing a guitar with the tremolo effect on it. He must have liked that then, because he did it on I'm Alive, he did it on So Lonely, both versions, and he did it on this song, Honey and Wine. Great Alan Clark performance. Sorry to rush over that song. And a Graham Nash harmony, Honey and Wine. Only came out on that EP. That EP, which, by the way, had a really out-of-date photograph of the band on the front. I don't know why. It was almost a year old, probably about a year old, the photo of the band on the front of the I'm Alive EP. And Graham's still got a quiff. Alan Clark's, he's going to have a boxing match with whoever, Nigel Benn or whoever, not Nigel Benn, who was it? Whoever it was, Chris Eubank used to have boxing matches with. This is I collect these Japanese... I'm not really talking about the Japanese albums where I keep them in a box. So they modeled it after Hollies 65 with the picture inside it, the back cover on the inside. And I've decided to put these, the old days, the American albums, here, with a pun title, it's the picture of the second album, but it's actually the third album, the American version of that. So that's good, but I don't know. I haven't decided how I'm going to talk about the American albums really. I mean, as and when they come up, I talked about them a bit, like how Stay was a different mix and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a handy little box that with Hollies on the side of it in that font. I love this font. I can never remember what it's called. I keep looking for the name of this font. It's similar to the Red Dwarf credits. Like they use a bold version of it. Very 1965. So it's of its time, but it's also timeless. It hasn't aged, and people mock Hollies album covers, but I think this deserves credit. This is before Rubber Soul, this is before Revolver. This is a brilliant album cover. I think, who designed it? It just says who photographed it. It doesn't say who designed it. Well, the Hollies ended the year 1965 with a very controversial, and I'm going to give you my take on that. What's Nathan Broussard's take on the whole George Harrison If I Needed Someone thing? It comes up on Hollies forums. Hollies fans and things talk about this. They closed 1964 with a massive flop, and unfortunately they also ended 1965 with everyone just slags this thing off. Oh, what were they thinking? They did a version of If I Needed Someone. I don't think it's terrible. I quite like their version. Yeah, I prefer the Beatles version. I would have liked to have heard Hollies do a version of Nowhere Man. If they were listening to Rubber Soul and taking songs off that, imagine the Hollies doing with those 3-part harmonies. That Nowhere Plans for Nobody, the bit at the end, which Paul McCartney, when he goes Nowhere Plans, imagine Graham Nash doing that, you know what I mean? The three of them doing that, Clark, Hicks and Nash. I'd love to have heard that. And the guitar, John Lennon and George Harrison playing the chiming guitar solo. Imagine not only Tony Hicks playing that, there's a chance that Graham Nash, because he was now plugging his guitar in. But it's another thing from 1965. Graham Nash is finally plugging in his guitar. He's playing an electric now. I've seen a picture of him with a Telecaster with a Vox headstock. And that Dan Electro he's playing, and the Vox Phantom. He's finally plugging his guitar in. Him and Tony could have played, maybe even Alan Clark. Alan Clark was playing guitar then as well. And imagine the three of them playing that jangly guitar solo. It would have been amazing. But anyway, George was apparently quoted as saying, "Oh, the Hollies sound like whatever it was, session men, and it's crummy." And then apparently, because he became neighbours with Tony Hicks in Henley-on-Thames decades later, and apparently Bobby Elliott says that he ran into him and he said, "Hey, Tony, look, really sorry about that business 30 years ago. I've got to tell you, I never said that. Me, George Harrison, my press officer said that to stir up some kind of rivalry thing." Now, I don't know if that's true. And I don't know if it's true that George said that to Tony, and I don't know if it's true that it even happened, because it does sound like George Harrison's words, and the kind of thing George Harrison would do. Like, I'm such a diehard fan of his, and I think that it is true, sadly, that George did slag it off. Now, the problem I have is that he did a stupid thing to himself, so he cost the Hollies a massive hit song. It didn't do well. It probably got top 20, it probably went top 10, but it did flop, and they were embarrassed by it. They needed something massive to recover for it, and boy did they get one, and then some. But that's for the next episode. My God, what they came back with, oh my word, amazing Hollies song, one of the best in their entire catalogue. But sticking in this time frame, George Harrison slagging that song off, okay, he was very bitter. He was a very, for all this Hare Krishna this and Hare Krishna that, he was a very bitter man who held a grudge. You know, he lived in a park, and he's got grudges. It's like, mate, you live in a park. Just shut up. I'm sorry, and I'm a massive fan of his, but yeah, sometimes, you know, he does wind me up, right? And so he's bitter at this whole Lennon McCartney thing, because he mocks them, because, well, there were three of us in the backs of those limos, you know, in Hamburg, standing on stage singing. There were three of us. It was John, Paul, and George, and then Ringo came in later on. You know. Those three were equals, and then suddenly they got famous, and they go, well, we're not doing covers anymore, we're doing originals. So all this Lennon McCartney, and he got sick of people going on and on about him. He goes, well, I'm Harrison, well, you know, do some of my songs, you know what I mean? And he used to get bitter that he had to fight to get his songs on albums and stuff like that. Even Ringo Starr got to sing on a Beatles A-side single before George Harrison did, you know what I mean? Like, that's the best. Like, Yellow Submarine was like 3 years before George Harrison even got to sing on an A-side, on an A-side, and 2 years before he sang on a B-side, which was the In the Light B-side of Lady Madonna in 1968. So by doing this, he cost the Hollies a hit, but he cost himself two things: a fortune in royalties. If he had just not been an idiot, not been just curmudgeonly for the sake of being curmudgeonly, if he'd have just been grateful that someone... give Hollies some credit for Every Man and His Dog covering Lennon McCartney songs. The Hollies decide, no, we're going to do something weird and different. We're not going to be like everyone else. We're going to cover a George Harrison song. Who was doing that? Hollies. No one would even have thought of doing such a thing. But no, they went, yeah. I guess they thought they were underdogs, or they were relating to him or something. Let's do a George Harrison song. No one's ever done that. And then it flopped, and then George slagged it off in the press, and then so not only did it cost the Hollies a hit, it cost George Harrison a fortune in royalties. And you know, George Harrison loved money. I'm sorry, he loved money, you know what I mean? And he could have made a fortune. Another thing that people might have started taking George Harrison seriously as a songwriter had the Hollies had a hit, had he not just been mean for the sake of it, you know, grumpy and grouchy for the sake of, you know, something to say in the press. I'm not saying he had to lie, but at least say, at least thank them for covering his song. Say, hey, the Hollies have done one of my songs. Finally, because everyone's doing John and Paul songs, finally someone's doing one of my songs. So the Hollies could have had a hit. George would have got a fortune in royalties, and people would have started going, oh, that George Harrison, there are three guys in the Beatles, right? There's like a third guy in the Beatles. George Harrison's writing songs now. Maybe we should start listening to him. And then, I mean, okay, on the next album, Revolver, George Harrison did get 3 songs on that album, but that was such a one-off. That was a very rare thing. As soon as Sgt. Pepper was, he went straight back to only having 1 song on Beatles albums. But yeah, it just could have been so different for him. So that's my take in it. That roundabout is my take on the If I Needed Someone thing. Like how things could have been different. So I like their version. There are some French language things. I think those are 1966. I think that's everything. Everyone, thanks for being so patient. Wow, an hour. That's good going. Hollies, 1965. Forever. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much. I'll do 1966 too. Now we're going to go back to 2 episodes for that because they made 2 albums. There's 1 per album really. That was their 1965. I'll talk a bit more about footage. There's a clip of I'm Alive, which is the studio version, but I don't know where they are. They're in like Eastern Europe or somewhere. I don't know where they're, but there's 3 microphones, and I think they're recording a radio show, a TV show, and live. They're singing live, so the audience would hear it. Where is the audio for this? It must be in an archive somewhere. That's a holy grail of mine, to find that. The Hollies doing a live version of I'm Alive. I think they do it on BBC. Because just to hear how they did it, because Bobby's overdubbing drums. He talks about that later on, but already this early he's overdubbing drums. He's doing ding 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 on the cymbal, and he's going digga 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 dum on the toms. But while he's playing the beat normally, and then he's overdubbing the da-da-da-da-da-dum, and he's overdubbing the ding-da-da-ding-da-da-ding-da-ding, which is like that song by the Crickets, Well Alright, with Jerry Allison. Ding-da-da-ding-da-da-ding. That's a great song as well. Oh, he's a brilliant drummer, Jerry Allison. Oh my gosh, so good. Maybe Bobby was a fan of his. I know Bobby was into jazz and stuff, but he would have heard the Crickets and noticed that was impressive drumming. Weird drumming that just sort of stands out. The Hollies had that and the Crickets had that, where you listen to it and you go, that is not a normal drummer. That is a phenomenon doing that. Very talented guy. Bobby, I talked about him doing arrangements and stuff like that. Yeah. What else is there from 65? Footage wise, I mean, at the moment I can only think of those two things. There must be more from 60. Is that really all there is from 1965? Miming to I'm Alive, and the live version of Look Through the Window. American television. They do a great thing. They mime to Look Through Any Window, and Tony's miming on a 6 string. Graham is miming on Tony's Vox 12 string. He's borrowed his Vox 12 string and he's miming on it. Tony is literally playing a 12 string on the record. I don't know why. Maybe they did that for a laugh. And they run on one by one. And the announcer is not Bobby Darin. It's someone like that. I temporarily can't remember who it is, or Bobby Vinton or someone, or one of the Bobbies. Not Bobby Elliott. And and he's introducing this, saying from Ancoats, Eric Haydock, or from Stockport, or from Salford, he says Salford, Alan Clark, from Nelson, Tony Hicks, and so on. So you get American audiences got to hear their names and where they were from. Each Holly running on, and they do an action replay, and here's Tony Hicks playing the guitar solo. That's a great clip. They do, is it Hullabaloo, I think it is, or something, Hollywood A Go-Go, I think it is. They do Yes I Will and I'm Alive. Oh my god, Shindig as well. They do Too Much Monkey Business, where they go, I mentioned this in the last episode, where they go into the bit where Graham sings it first, and they do a different song. Now I think he does I Feel Fine. He goes, baby's good to me, and they go, no. It's brilliant. I'm rushing through this, because I've got to wind this up, you see. That's great footage of them. Do they do I'm Alive on that? No, they do. So they do Yes I Will, which is weird. It's a nice ballad, but it's got go-go dances and things. They are miming to that, but Alan Clark is singing a live vocal. Tony and Graham are probably singing live harmonies. I temporarily can't remember. I've got to go and watch that clip later on. I've probably forgotten a ton of stuff from 1965. I think I've covered most of it. A great year. I loved the way they looked in 65, the way they sounded, the clothes, the hair. They just got it all right. Bobby is, by this point, I can't find it, but I think he's got the Holly logo on his bass drum. He's playing a sparkly Premier. Is he using a Ludwig snare drum at this point? But he might be playing a Premier at the front, so you can see the word Premier, but he might be using a Ludwig snare drum. The snare drum was hidden behind the rack tom, so you couldn't really see it on television, and they didn't have great reception in those days. They didn't have, HD in those days, so you couldn't tell. He was probably using a Ludwig snare drum, I think, but a Premier kit. They're using Vox amps, Eric is playing a Fender now, a precision bass, is it? I don't think it's a jazz bass. I can't see a good enough picture on one. Well, I can on here. I can't tell. I think that's a precision bass. Don't think they had jazz basses. Or maybe they did. Oh, Eric's using a curly lead. Just noticed that. I know things like what leads they use, as well as what amps and what pigs, what strap they're wearing. Tony and Eric have the same one. This is brilliant. Hollies 1965. That's all the footage of them. There must be other stuff out there. They went on TV a lot, they went on radio a lot, so fortunately most of the radio stuff survives. There's stuff that isn't on Radio Fun. There's a version of Stay. They were the guest on the final Beatles radio show. I don't think they were in the studio at the same time, because there's a whole thing about the Hollies. I think Paul liked them, John and George didn't like them, and I don't know what Ringo thought of the Hollies. I don't know is the answer, but I know Paul always got on with them and he liked them. John probably felt threatened by them. George, as you know, and then later on became one of Tony Hicks's neighbours. Maybe they became friends later on, or at least cordial, if not die-hard friends or anything. What was I talking about? The radio shows or the footage? Probably the footage. That's all the ones I can think of. The Palladium, the American stuff, and them miming to "I'm Alive." That is such a weird clip. It's weird that he's got like three. Alan Clark is singing into three microphones, but what you're hearing is the recording. But he's like sweating down. They're all moving. They're definitely playing live. Someone has dubbed the audio of that. Maybe the audio never came out. I don't know, but it must be around somewhere. Like for three things, like a radio show, a TV show, and the live. Someone must have kept a copy of it. You're telling me it all got destroyed? All of it? Actually, it probably did. It was the 60s. But enough about the 60s. 1965. Hollies, 1965. Thanks for watching. I'll see you. The next episode will be... it'll be Would You Believe, which is the name of this... Is it a podcast, a video podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go and upload this now. Thanks loads, everyone. Probably going to drink loads of tea and enjoy the sunshine. It's going to get foggy later on. Alright, listen to Hollies forever. I'm so glad. Thanks everyone for tuning in for this thing. I just love this group. I could talk about them for absolutely centuries, which 1 hour 10, that's not centuries, but it's a long time. Go and listen to this album.